Good afternoon and welcome to our daily online press briefing. I am very happy to meet you virtually in the European Commission's press room. Today we are Friday the 25th of September and je passe au français et comme chaque vendredi, nous allons commencer nos annonces avec la présentation de l'agenda de la présidente von der Leyen pour la semaine à venir. Suite à l'invitation du président portugais Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, la présidente sera en déplacement à Lisbonne lundi et mardi prochain. Lundi, la présidente rencontrera le Premier ministre António Costa. Leur réunion sera suivie par une déclaration à la presse et elle sera suivie également d'un dîner de travail organisé par le Premier ministre. Puis, mardi matin, la présidente von der Leyen prononcera un discours à la Fondation Champalimaud sur le plan de relance européen. La présidente participera ensuite à un déjeuner de travail avec le président et le Premier ministre Costa. Plus tard dans la journée, la présidente prendra part à la session du Conseil d'État portugais. Mercredi, de retour à Bruxelles, la présidente présidera, comme chaque mercredi, la réunion hebdomadaire du collège, comme d'habitude. Et le jeudi et vendredi, la présidente participera au Conseil européen extraordinaire qui, comme vous le savez, a été reporté à la semaine prochaine. Et maintenant, je vais inviter Viviane à se connecter pour vous donner des nouvelles sur des investissements de la politique de cohésion en Croatie. Viviane, est-ce que tu es là?
Merci Dana, j'espère bien d'être là. Donc, good afternoon. Today, the European Commission has approved an EU cohesion policy investment of over 48 million euros to build a new waste management system in Zadar and Lika-Semi counties in Croatia. This will ensure less waste disposed in the landfills and more waste to be recycled and biodegraded. This major project will ensure better living conditions for local residents and reduce health risks caused by inadequately treated waste. The project area covers 8 towns and 33 municipalities, corresponding to about 12% of Croatia's total area, with a population of almost 200,000 people. By separating and recycling waste, this project will contribute to reducing Croatia's greenhouse gas emissions and create new jobs in the waste management sector. The project is expected to be operational as of the summer 2022, and as usual, you will find more information in our daily news. Thank you.
Viviane, et avec ceci, nous sommes prêts pour vos questions. Je vois déjà la main d'Odile qui est levée, donc Odile, vas-y, la parole est à toi.
Merci Dana. Oui, pour Radio Nord-Bretagne, une question pour Daniel. Les transports maritimes transmanche seront-ils au programme du 8e round des négociations post-Brexit avec le Royaume-Uni? En effet, on sait que l'effet conjugué du Brexit et les mesures de quarantaine décidées avec très peu de préavis impactent lourdement la compagnie, entre autres la compagnie Brittany Ferries, qui assure néanmoins des relations avec les autoroutes de la mer entre 4 pays. Donc, on voudrait savoir un peu ce qu'il en est au niveau des négociations sur ce point. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Odile. Dan, à toi.
Oui. Merci Dana et bonjour Odile. Effectivement, le 9e round de négociation aura lieu la semaine prochaine. Pour l'instant, je ne peux pas confirmer l'agenda ou les sujets spécifiques qui seront dans les différentes salles de négociation la semaine prochaine, mais une fois confirmé, je vous envoie bien sûr l'agenda. Mais je peux confirmer bien sûr que le transport est bien un sujet qui fait partie des négociations avec le Royaume-Uni. Sur tes questions spécifiques au niveau des compagnies, je ne pourrais pas faire de commentaires là-dessus en ce moment.
Merci beaucoup Dan. Donc dès que l'agenda sera disponible, on va le rendre, on va l'envoyer à Odile et on va le rendre public évidemment. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour Dan à ces sujets des négociations avec le Royaume-Uni? Donc, je vous prie de garder vos mains levées à ce stade seulement si vous avez des questions pour Dan à ces sujets. Je vois la main de Shertat qui est levée. Est-ce que c'est bien une question pour Dan? Non, ça ne doit pas être le cas puisque...
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me. Yes, this is Sartaj from Euronews. My question is not on Brexit, on negotiations. It's on Turkey.
Then I will kindly invite you to wait a bit because I am planning to take all the questions related to Brexit negotiations to group them in this briefing. So yes, the next one will be James.
Thank you, Diana. Hello, Dan. Yeah, quick question, really. There's been a few quotes flying around speaking to a sense of renewed optimism ahead of the next round of talks. After Mr. Barnier met Mr. Frost this week, does the European Commission share this sense of renewed optimism and this idea that there is still a pathway to a deal?
Hi, James. It'll come as no surprise to you that I'm not going to comment on comments or on articles that have been published today or over the past couple of days. You know the round of negotiations is next week, so I would ask you to hold on until the end of that round and we will inform you about the latest there. But if you were to ask the European Commission's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, whether he's optimistic or not, he will, I'm sure, answer in the same way as he's always answered over the past 4 years, that he is neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but he's determined to reach a deal.
Thank you very much, Dan. Now I give the floor to Gavin, who I assume also has a question on the same subject. Go ahead.
I do. I've got a slight delay on my screen. I hope you can hear me okay and it's not too distorted. So my question is, on a similar note, and sorry to push you again on this, Dan, but slightly more nuanced. Let's see how you take it. But if we look at the line that there is a deal coming into view, how the Times were briefed today, can you even give a sense of perhaps whether that is a sense of how things really are? Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. There was indeed a very significant delay, which made you basically speak at the same time with us hearing Dan's previous answer. If Dan is confident that he understood your question fully, I will give him the floor to answer. Otherwise, I will invite you to repeat it. Dan, are you okay? Did you capture the sense of the question?
Sorry, apologies, I cut myself off there. Indeed, I heard Gavin's question, but I also heard my previous answer. My previous answer remains the answer to your question, Gavin.
That was a nice coincidence, then, question being answered at the same time as it was asked. So do we have any other questions on Brexit today? So please keep your hand raised only if you have a question related to Brexit. Odile, you have your hand raised, so please. Je me demande si Odile est là pour son follow-up.
Oui, oui. Oh, ah oui, ça n'a pas bien appuyé, sorry. Bon, Dan, est-ce que vous pensez que, en raison du Covid, c'est en fait une excuse pour peut-être ne pas perdre la face et demander quelques mois supplémentaires pour la période de transition pour les...
Merci Odile, désolé, je pense que je t'ai coupé là, mais je bien compris la question. Je ne vais pas spéculer sur ces commentaires. Comme tu sais bien, la transition termine à la fin de l'année, le 31 décembre. Le Royaume-Uni ne voulait pas prolonger la transition pendant le mois de juin, mais la transition termine à la fin de l'année et nous sommes déterminés à arriver à un accord qui sera en place du 1er janvier 2021.
Merci beaucoup, Dan. I will invite you now to keep your hand raised if you have additional questions on Brexit. James's hand is raised, so James, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'll make this as quick and as possible. Are there any plans or discussions about a 10th round of negotiations to follow next week's round of trade negotiations?
Thank you. Dan, go ahead.
James, indeed, yeah, the 9th round of negotiations is next week, and any further rounds will be scheduled once they're scheduled, but at this stage I can't confirm them.
Okay, thank you. And now I understand that David has a question on Brexit as well, as his hand is raised. So David, go ahead.
Thanks, Dana. I wonder if we could just go back to an expectation, Dan, that at some point these talks will get kicked up to the Prime Minister on the UK side, and presumably it's the Commission President on the EU side. And I just wonder if you could explain to us, given that the mandate for negotiations comes from the Council, would President von der Leyen have any more negotiating room than Michel Barnier has right now? What would be different theoretically or even legally possibly different if it was a conversation between the leaders compared to a conversation between the negotiators? Thanks.
Hi, David. Thanks for your question. I honestly don't think I would have anything specific to comment on there. I mean, you know our positions, and our positions are drafted and outlined by the European Council, which is the very, very highest level here in the European Union. So I wouldn't want to speculate or say anything else at this stage. You know that we are determined here to reach a deal with the UK within the mandate that has been given to us. You have all of the statements by Michel Barnier and, of course, by President von der Leyen on this topic, but I wouldn't want to speculate now at this stage about what may or may not happen over the coming weeks.
This is very right. Thank you very much, Dan. I will now open the floor to other questions, as I see no longer questions on the negotiations with the UK, and indeed I go back to Sertaç. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. This is Sertaç from Euronews Turkish service. This morning, Turkey issued detention warrants for 82 people on counter-terrorism grounds, including major Kurdish political figures and the mayor, for their suspect involvement in large-scale protests back in 2014, 6 years ago. So, will the Commission have a reaction to this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. For this question, I will invite Peter to connect. Are you there, Peter?
Yes, I'm there, but since this is concerning internal issues regarding the Turkish judiciary, I would maybe leave the floor to Anna and then jump in if there is something more to add.
Indeed, so we will take your compliment and the broader picture at the end. Anna, are you connected?
Hi, many thanks.
There you are.
Yes, thank you, many thanks. As you know, this is indeed not the first time that we see these kind of events happening. Indeed, the EU had already expressed its concerns with regards to the anti-terrorist law in Turkey. As regards to this new development, I think that you can probably wait to have a more formal also a reaction from the European Union on this case as well. So I think that you will be able to expect one.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much. I will now invite you to ask additional questions on this matter and on Turkey specifically, if you have any. I see that Dushan's hand is raised, but I wonder if this is on Turkey. I understand from our chat that it is not, so I will still keep the floor open now at this stage for questions related to Turkey. And I see Christian's hand being raised. Christian, vas-y.
Non, moi je suis pas sur la Turquie, je suis sur le Venezuela, donc je peux attendre.
Je pense qu'il n'y a pas d'autres questions sur la Turquie, Christian, puisque je ne vois pas d'autres mains levées. Donc, je t'invite à poser ta question sur le Venezuela.
Très bien. En fait, Monsieur Borrell est sujet à de très graves accusations qui sont portées par le chef du groupe du PPE au Parlement européen, Monsieur Manfred Weber, qui l'accuse d'avoir envoyé une mission clandestine au Venezuela pour soutenir le dictateur Maduro. Alors, je voudrais savoir ce qu'il en est de cette mission. Je voudrais savoir ce qu'il en est de sa clandestinité. Je voudrais savoir comment Monsieur Borrell perçoit une accusation aussi grave. Est-ce qu'elle est due à une incompréhension de la part du chef du groupe du PPE sur effectivement les déclarations qu'il a faites après sa réunion avec les ministres des Affaires étrangères lundi ici à Bruxelles, ou est-ce qu'on est en face, et ça c'est beaucoup plus grave, d'une sérieuse campagne de désinformation véhiculée par des députés européens qui ont des répercussions en Espagne où elles sont reprises allègrement par le PP dans une campagne de déstabilisation du gouvernement de M. Sanchez. Donc on est limite très 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 sérieusement grave. Qu'est-ce que M. Borrell a à dire là-dessus? Merci.
J'invite Nabila pour t'apporter une réponse à cette question. Je vais faire baisser. Bonjour Christian et merci pour ta question. Nous avons vu en effet une lettre du membre du Parlement que tu mentionnais et une réponse va bientôt être envoyée comme nous le faisons pour toute question parlementaire ou pour toute question qui est envoyée ou pour toute lettre qui est envoyée aux représentants. Donc voilà, il y a une réponse qui est en train d'être draftée as we speak, comme je dis. En ce qui concerne la mission de nos deux senior officials, de nos deux représentants du SEAE, c'est une mission, comme tu sais, et comme tu étais présent, je pense, lundi au FAC. Le haut représentant a eu de nombreux contacts dans les derniers mois, voire les dernières semaines, pour justement promouvoir un minimum de conditions démocratiques avant les élections législatives. Il a communiqué cela publiquement et la plus récente déclaration qu'il a faite a été lors du ministre de la ministérielle des Affaires étrangères, donc la semaine dernière. Je vais te dire en anglais ce qu'il a dit, et tu le sais probablement, mais je le répète. We will continue reaching out to the Maduro government and both parts of the opposition group to see how we can be useful for a peaceful and democratic transition in Venezuela. Donc, cette mission fait partie des efforts qui ont également été, qui sont là et qui ont été, et dont le haut représentant a également un mandat qu'il a eu aussi lors de la réunion du International Contact Group le 17 septembre et donc au FAC la semaine dernière. Il y a une petite mission qui s'est faite de 2 IES senior officials qui sont à Caracas pour faire leur travail de diplomate. Ces officials vont rencontrer tout ce qu'on appelle les interlocuteurs, les forces politiques, l'opposition, la société civile, le secteur privé et l'Église. Il y a eu dans le passé, je dirais dans le passé très, très contemporain, plusieurs missions de International Contact Group dans des formats différents avec le même objectif précis, la dernière en date étant en mai 2019. Les États membres étaient informés de cette mission avant le départ de ces 2 diplomates en question. J'espère que j'ai répondu à ta question. Merci beaucoup,
Non.
Nabila. Christian, tu as une question de suivi, vas-y.
Mais ce n'est pas une question de suivi, c'est que je ne suis pas du tout satisfait avec cette réponse, excuse-moi. Cette mission, elle est clandestine ou elle n'est pas clandestine? L'accusation, elle porte là-dessus. Vous dites non, ce n'est pas une mission clandestine, c'est clair. mais on ne dit pas on va répondre à M. Weber. M. Weber est en train d'inonder les réseaux sociaux avec des tweets dans lesquels il accuse M. Borrell d'envoyer une mission clandestine pour soutenir la dictature. Est-ce que vous lui répondez directement ou est-ce que vous attendez et essayez de faire l'autruche? C'est quand même un truc hallucinant qu'on est en train de voir là-dessus. M. Borrell est carrément accusé de faire le jeu de Maduro par un député européen, qui plus est le chef du groupe du PPE au Parlement européen. C'est pas n'importe qui. Ça, c'est relayé en Espagne par le PP espagnol. C'est une campagne de désinformation, oui ou non? C'est ça ma question.
Merci beaucoup pour la question que tu as posée pour Nabila. Elle va te répondre avec des éléments plus précis dans une minute, mais tu considéreras que nous n'allons pas faire des commentaires ou nous associer à des commentaires qui peuvent être les tiens sur des liens avec la politique nationale en relation avec ces sujets ou d'autres. Mais Nabila va te répondre spécifiquement sur cette mission.
Christian, pour être tout à fait simple et pour être tout à fait clair, ce n'est pas du tout une mission clandestine. Comme je l'ai dit, c'est une mission qui est faite dans le cadre de leur travail en tant que diplomate. Donc ce n'est pas du tout une mission clandestine, elle ne l'a jamais été. Et ce que je viens de dire, c'est que justement, cette mission, avec les diplomates, ont informé les États membres avant de partir. Donc je pense que je ne peux être plus claire que ça. J'espère que je satisfais. En répondant comme ça, tu es satisfait.
Merci beaucoup Nabila. Je vous invite maintenant à poser d'autres questions si vous avez à Nabila sur ce sujet. Donc je vous prie de garder vos mains levées seulement si vous avez des questions sur le sujet Venezuela. Ce n'est pas le cas, donc je vous invite désormais à poser d'autres questions à Nabila si vous avez sur d'autres sujets d'affaires étrangères qu'elle couvre. Donc je vois la main d'Anna qui est levée. Anna, vas-y. Anna, je pense que tu dois appuyer sur...
Can you hear me now?
Oui, we can hear you.
And can you see me? No?
Unfortunately not. But we can hear you.
So I asked my question then verbally, just without image. I have a question to Nabila on the event that will happen next week, because our High Representative Borrell is going to host a meeting of development ministers. It will be an informal meeting on 29, but however, there are a lot of important issues concerning Africa that will be discussed, as we understood. And my question to Nabila is, can she give us some insights? And also, namely, what happens about post-Cotonou? Because now, as we all understand, the agenda has been influenced greatly by these post-pandemic events. So it's post-Cotonou, our next week, and our development ministers.
Thank you, Nabila.
Bonjour Anna. Dans le cadre de la présidence allemande du Conseil de l'Union européenne, le haut représentant Josep Borrell et le ministre fédéral allemand pour la coopération économique et le développement Gerd Müller présideront ensemble mardi 29 septembre une réunion informelle des ministres du développement de l'Union européenne. Les ministres débattront de la manière dont l'Union européenne peut être le meilleur partenaire de l'Afrique pour une reprise durable suite à la pandémie du Covid-19 et s'appuieront sur les enseignements tirés du déploiement du paquet Team Europe pour soutenir les efforts africains visant à atténuer la crise. Ils discuteront également de la manière de contribuer à reconstruire en mieux des sociétés plus vertes et plus résistantes en Afrique et auront un échange de vues avec le directeur exécutif du programme alimentaire mondial, David Beasley. La commissaire Urpilainen informera donc les ministres de l'état d'avancement du processus de négociation de post-Cotonou. Et je me rends compte maintenant que je t'ai répondu en français alors que la question était posée en anglais et j'en suis désolée. Pour post-Cotonou, si tu as des questions supplémentaires, je donnerai plutôt la parole à Anna.
Anna, est-ce que tu es connectée? But we can now switch to English since the question was asked in English. So Anna, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the question. Do you hear me? Yeah? I don't hear you now, Dana, but hopefully you hear me.
Yes, we do.
Okay, now I hear
All
you.
good.
Now I hear you. Okay. Thanks so much for the question, Anna. So what I can tell you is that the post-Cotonou negotiations resumed at the beginning of the month between the two teams after the holiday recess. The agreement, we can say, is nearly completed. There are a few points that are still open. These are complex. And they will be crucial to be able to reach a balanced agreement. However, the two sides are the objective of the two sides is to try to conclude the negotiations as soon as possible. And as Nabila has explained, Commissioner Urpilainen, who is the chief negotiator, as you very well know, on the EU side for this deal, will update the ministers on where we are.
Thank you very much, Anna. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Nabila on this subject if you have, or on other subject that she would cover. Odile, je vois que ta main est levée. Est-ce que tu as une question pour Nabila à ce sujet?
Oui, c'est pour Nabila ou Anna. Concernant l'Afrique, justement. Je suis interpellée par un rapport d'une agence africaine concernant les découvertes de gaz au Mozambique. Et il y en a aussi dans d'autres pays. Et dans ce communiqué, il semble que plusieurs dirigeants africains se plaignent que en raison aussi de la transition écologique, etc., les pays du Nord veulent faire pression pour qu'on respecte et qu'on garde le gaz dans le sol, toutes ces ressources. Alors, autrement dit, comment essayer de concilier les objectifs les objectifs de la transition écologique et puis ces pays disent pour une fois que nous avons la chance de trouver une ressource naturelle qui va nous permettre de donner l'électricité. Il faut se rappeler par exemple qu'en Mozambique, il n'y a que simplement 29% de la population qui a de l'électricité. Ce genre d'argument, je l'ai entendu aussi à la COP25 à Madrid. Bon, on doit préparer Glasgow maintenant. Et donc là, comment est-ce qu'on arrive à conjuguer ces deux points de vue, si vous voulez? Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour ta question, Odile, qui est une grande question, qui est une question complexe et qui, en fait, qui met ensemble plusieurs filières de travail et des priorités à la Commission, qui implique notre travail avec nos partenaires sur le pacte sur le climat, aussi spécifiquement nos relations de partenariat avec l'Afrique plus en général. Donc ce que je te propose, et parce que cela implique au moins 3 porte-paroles, est que nous allons consolider et préparer une réponse que nous allons t'apporter cet après-midi entre les 3 angles différents que je vois, au moins 3, à la question que tu as posée. J'invite maintenant d'autres questions pour Nabila, si vous en avez, sur des affaires étrangères qu'elle couvre notamment. Je vois que Dushan a une question. Dushan, vas-y.
Thank you. I have a question on Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. I don't know if it's for Nabila, but can I go?
Yes, please go ahead, because I have no other hands raised. So it will be for Peter, who is preparing duly, but go ahead.
All right. So the question is about the dialogue that is scheduled on Monday. We saw yesterday Mr. Lajčák announced that there will be talks on the expert level and not on the level of Prime Minister or President, as it was expected and previously announced, obviously because of disagreements between two sides about topics, one specific topic of community of Serbian municipalities in Kosovo. So my question is, Given that the EU cannot bring two sides to discuss issues here in Brussels on the high political level, even those previously agreed, does it mean that the dialogue is already in crisis, that it is already blocked only 2 months after it was restarted in July? And second question, also given that two sides cannot agree about what to discuss here, what is the way forward, how the EU sees the next steps? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dusan. Peter, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dusan. Let me first fix some facts and correct some facts. We never announced that there would be a high-level meeting on Monday. That's one thing. There were different information flying around, but we never made a formal announcement. As you know, the practice, since the dialogue was resumed, was to announce the next steps and the agenda of the next meetings when appropriate and shortly before it's going to happen. So this is one thing. The other thing is the dialogue continues, and the meeting of the experts at the chief negotiators level on Monday, next Monday, 28th of September, here in Brussels, is just concrete example that the dialogue is moving forward. The agenda of these expert discussions will contain discussions on mutual financial claims and property, and the previously mentioned issue of arrangements for the non-majority community will not be on the agenda of this meeting on Monday, because one party is not yet ready to discuss this. But let's be very clear, this issue must be addressed as part of the comprehensive agreement, as was agreed in the first meeting of the leaders at the highest level in July this year, and reconfirmed at their latest meeting in Brussels on September the 7th. So the dialogue is not in crisis, it's not stopping, and we are proceeding. And I understand the need for catchy and attractive headlines, which are always better when they have something negative in them. But I have to disappoint you because the dialogue proceeds. The EU is determined. We have clear statement about the determination from both sides that they want to proceed, they are committed to proceed. I can only recall the latest statement by both the President Vučić and Prime Minister Hoti, also from the 7th of September when they were in Brussels. So we are proceeding, and we as the EU, our plan is to continue to work very hard and to provide our best services to help both partners to overcome whatever disagreements they have in order to find consensus and proceed so that they can eventually arrive to the point where they achieve the agreement on the final and legally binding agreement on normalizing their relations.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. Dusan has a follow-up question because his hand is still raised. So if that's the case, go ahead, Dusan.
Yes, very, very quickly. So in that case, when would you expect the Prime Minister and President to meet again here in Brussels?
Well, it's not about our expectation. It's about the logical sequence of steps that are being done or need to be done in order to proceed with meetings at appropriate levels. So now, as you know, until now, the practice was the expert meetings or chief negotiators meetings are preceding the meetings at the highest level. This is the pattern we established. We want to, of course, continue, but we are not imposing anything. For us, it's important to make sure that there is agreement on the substance, on the agenda, on the dates, and whenever both partners are ready, then we proceed. And then on our side, then we are always happy to announce when everything is in place, when the next meeting would take place, be it on the expert level, chief negotiators level, or at the highest political level by the President of Serbia and Prime Minister of Kosovo.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will now invite you to raise your hand if you have additional questions for Peter on the subject, the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. I see that Gerakina's hand is raised, so please go ahead, Gerakina.
Peter, two remarks, in fact. You say that you never announced the next high-level meeting. Mr. Lajčák himself on 7th of September announced the meeting for 28th of September, which was confirmed by both leaders, but that doesn't matter. Also, Mr. Lajčák yesterday had a tweet where he specifically mentioned the question of association of Serb municipalities, which implies evidently that that topic was on the agenda. So You cannot say that you don't announce in advance when you have formal confirmations by the person who is in charge directly by EU to manage this process.
Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that in the absence of some substance, it's always attractive also to play with the words a little bit. But let me repeat what I said. We make the announcement to confirm that something is going to happen with agenda and exact date when appropriate, when everything is in place. One should, and I think with experienced people who are following this for some time already, you know that after every meeting there is announcement that what we expect to happen, and then there is a work done in order to implement it. Since we are not providing the running commentary on these procedures and every single step that happens in between, the good practice was that, and is, and will stay, that we announce shortly before something is going to happen, that we announce that meeting at that level or with that agenda is going to happen. This has been the practice all along, and it will stay like this, regardless what one or other party can say about it. But the bottom line is the dialogue continues. The next expert level meeting is on Monday, and we hope that they will be able to move the issues forward so that soon we will be able to formally, officially announce and confirm next date of the high-level meeting.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. I will now invite you to raise your hand if you have additional questions for Peter on this subject first, on the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. I don't see any hand raised. So Griselda was next with a question. So Griselda, go ahead.
Si. Merci. Excusez-moi de retourner à la question de Venezuela. Je suis un peu lente. Le fait que la mission ait été communiquée au gouvernement, est-ce qu'on doit conclure que le gouvernement soutienne cette initiative pour retarder les élections et pouvoir participer à l'Union comme observateur? Est-ce qu'il y a un consensus sur ça? Est-ce que vous savez?
Merci beaucoup, Griselda. Effectivement, la question est pour Nabila.
Excuse-moi, Griselda, est-ce que tu peux reposer ta question parce que je ne suis pas sûre de l'avoir bien comprise. Merci.
Pardon, maintenant. Je voulais savoir si le fait d'avoir communiqué aux États membres que la mission aurait lieu, et donc elle a eu lieu, je suppose que personne ne s'est opposé à cette mission, si tu veux confirmer ça, et si ça veut dire que les États membres soutiennent la mission en soi-même, c'est-à-dire l'objectif de réussir à faire retarder les élections au Venezuela. Est-ce qu'on doit conclure qu'il y a un consensus européen sur ce sujet? Je ne sais pas si je suis assez claire.
Oui. Non, Griselda, excuse-moi, parce que tout à l'heure, tu avais dit si on avait communiqué au gouvernement. C'est pour ça que j'étais un peu perplexe. En fait, ce que j'expliquais tout à l'heure, c'est qu'il y a un clair mandat des États membres, en tous les cas du dernier Conseil des affaires étrangères qui a eu lieu la semaine dernière, et du International Contact Group on Venezuela le 17 septembre. Et le mandat est tout simplement au HRVP de continuer les négociations. C'est-à-dire, l'idée c'est we will continue reaching out to Maduro government and both parts of the opposition groups to see how we can be useful for a peaceful and democratic transition in Venezuela. C'est ce que le haut représentant a dit lors de la conférence de presse au FAC. C'est ce qui a été dit également dans le joint communiqué qui a été publié au IC du International Contact Group. Et donc, c'est dans ce contexte-là et dans ce cadre-là qu'une mission a été envoyée. Voilà. Alors, pour ce qui est des élections, tu le sais très bien, on l'a dit à plusieurs reprises, que pour l'instant, en tous les cas, les élections, le contexte actuel des élections ne permet pas d'envoyer une IOM. Les conditions ne sont pas là. s'il devait y avoir des élections le 6 décembre, les conditions ne sont pas réunies pour envoyer une une mission d'observation électorale. Ça, on l'a dit, on l'a répété, je l'ai dit moi-même sur le podium, et le haut représentant également. Donc voilà, c'est ce qu'il en est, et je pense que c'est très très clair que... enfin, j'espère être assez claire pour te donner une réponse.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que Griselda a une question de suivi puisque sa main est toujours levée. Griselda, vas-y.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, il n'y a pas un mandat consensuel. Donc, à part le fait que l'Union veut bien négocier avec les deux partis, l'idée de retarder les élections n'a pas été débattue par le gouvernement et n'a pas un soutien. Oh oui, c'est ça que je ne comprends pas tout à fait. Et puis, excuse-moi parce que je n'ai pas demandé avant, mais ils reviennent quand ces des diplomates de Venezuela?
Pour ta deuxième question, c'est une petite mission donc où ils vont rencontrer tous les interlocuteurs et ils devraient être là de retour la semaine prochaine. Je ne suis pas sûre si j'ai encore bien compris ta réponse. On revient à la même question. À ta question, on revient à la même réponse qui est qu'il y a un consensus sur le fait qu'aujourd'hui, nous ne sommes pas prêts de déployer des élections, une mission d'observation électorale le 6 décembre. C'est ça qui est, et ça c'est très clair, c'est ce qui a été communiqué. Le haut représentant a également débriefé les ministres la semaine dernière. Il y a un communiqué que je t'invite à lire du ICG où exactement ceci est dit. Et donc, voilà, il y a un consensus sur tout.
Merci beaucoup, Nabila. Je vous invite maintenant à lever votre main si vous avez d'autres questions pour Nabila à ce sujet ou à d'autres. Donc, gardez votre main levée, s'il vous plaît, seulement si vous avez des questions à ce sujet. Je vois que Anna a sa main levée. Anna, vas-y. No? Her hand is no longer raised, so then, yes, she's trying. She's trying to connect, I understand? Yes, there she is.
I would like just to use this opportunity because Nabila came back to the podium, and I would like to find out in what form our High Representative Borrell will communicate to press within this informal meeting next week on the 29th. Could we expect, if she's already knows, it will be press conference or a statement? What can we expect? Because it's at most important meeting for African countries.
Thank you. Nabila.
Anna, we're discussing right now and finalizing the details of the press arrangements around this informal development meeting. So once we know more about it, we will let you know.
In due course. Thank you very much, Nabila. Unless there are other questions for Nabila at this stage, which doesn't seem to be the case, I will thank you for today. And I will open the floor to other questions. I see that Hans has his hand raised. Hans, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have a question on rule of law. I understood in the meeting yesterday between the Visegrad V4 and von der Leyen, this was discussed. Perhaps you could elaborate a bit on these discussions for the rule of law mechanism in the budget, and specifically, is it correct that this rule of law comparison mechanism that the Commissioner Reinders had initially announced for September 30th has been delayed to October, and if that is the case, why? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. On the first one, we had yesterday a rather lengthy discussions following the meeting between President von der Leyen and the prime ministers of three countries, Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And indeed, I can reiterate what I said yesterday, that a broad range of subjects were discussed. Among those was the subject of the rule of law mechanism in the context of the next long-term EU budget and of the recovery plan Next Generation EU. And in that discussion, President von der Leyen reiterated that the ball is now in the court of the Council, which, following the broad political agreement reached at the European Council on the 21st of July, will need yet now to come forward with its position. So that is the gist of the discussion which took place on that, because, as I said, the meeting covered a broader range of subjects. In relation to the rule of law report, so the first rule of law report, which covers all 27 member states, this is currently being worked on, prepared by the European Commission. No specific date was announced as to when it should come up. It will be on the table of the college soon, but as you know, our tradition and arrangement is that of announcing you agendas for college meetings after the meeting of the heads of cabinet of commissioners, which traditionally takes place on Mondays. So it is Mondays that we can confirm when a specific file is on the agenda of the commissioner and when it is therefore likely to be adopted. So bear with us. We have no such specific announcement to make today on this. I see that you have your hand raised, Hans, so if you have a follow-up question, please go ahead. Hans, do you have a follow-up question? Yes. Yes.
Yes, sorry, the button was not pressed. Thank you. Just since we heard that the V4 expressed strong opposition during the meeting yesterday with von der Leyen to this rule of law mechanism linked to the budget, is the Commission and is the Commission President still confident that such a mechanism can be implemented in an effective way, linking EU budget funds to a rule of law conditions? Thank you.
The position that we have, and which may be familiar to you, is that a rule of law mechanism is important for us all, because it is our joint responsibility of member states and of the EU institutions to ensure that EU funds are being used in a way where we can respond to the European citizens that taxpayers' money is being used in an effective way, and while respecting all the rules. But as we said, now the ball is in the court of the Council, which will need to clarify and decide its position for the negotiations to proceed. But otherwise, we do not comment on positions that other participants to our discussions may have expressed. Thank you for this. I will now check if there are additional questions on this matter at this stage. I see that Kataline's hand is raised. Katalin, go ahead.
Thank you, Dana, but it is not about the rule of law. Sorry, I raised my hand. It's about the Audiovisual Media Directive.
All right, so then if you bear a second to check if the next colleagues whose hands are raised were willing to ask questions about the rule of law. So, Naomi, I see that your hand is raised. Would you want to ask a question about this? That is not clear to me, but I understand that David has indeed a question on the MFF and the rule of law. So, David, go ahead.
Oui, merci Dana. En fait, c'est MFF, les négociations qui sont en cours, si je peux poser ma question. Ce matin, on a reçu une déclaration de l'ambassadeur, du représentant permanent de l'Allemagne qui a la présidence du Conseil, disant que le paquet MFF et Next Generation EU est un paquet unique. Le Parlement européen, via son porte-parole, mais aussi via son président et rapporteur, etc., dit non. Ces deux paquets différents, ils peuvent marcher sur des pistes parallèles, etc. Donc, je voulais savoir, vu que vous êtes le gardien du traité, et si, qui a raison entre les deux, la présidence du Conseil ou le Parlement? Merci.
Merci beaucoup, David. Je dois t'avouer que les conditions techniques dans lesquelles on a écouté ta question n'étaient pas très favorables. Il y a eu beaucoup d'interruptions. J'espère que nous avons compris l'essence de ta question. Et pour cela, j'appelle Balázs à apporter une réponse. Et tu vas rebondir si jamais on a manqué des éléments dus à la qualité du son que nous avons eu.
Oui, donc voilà quelques commentaires de mon côté. Donc voilà, ce qui se passe maintenant, c'est une réunion trilatérale. En fait, on en a eu déjà 4 entre les 3 institutions, donc la Commission, le Conseil de l'Union européenne et le Parlement européen. Donc ce genre de réunion a commencé le 27 août et ensuite on a eu une réunion le 7 septembre, le 11 et le 18. Et la prochaine réunion aura lieu le 28. Donc, comme vous le savez, tout ce qui est MFF et Next Generation EU, c'est un paquet assez complexe. Donc, il y a plusieurs éléments dont j'ai eu l'occasion de parler déjà à plusieurs reprises ici à partir du podium. Donc, il y a le règlement MFF, il y a un accord cadre interinstitutionnel, il y a aussi la modification de la décision sur les ressources propres, il y a le règlement Next Generation EU, il y a plein de législations sectorielles. Donc, chaque élément doit être adopté d'une manière différente. Donc, les détails, encore une fois, ont été clarifiés plusieurs fois à partir du podium. Et donc, exactement le parcours qu'on va suivre, ce sera déterminé dans le cadre des réunions trilatérales qui sont en cours pendant les semaines dernières.
Merci beaucoup, Balázs. Je pense que David a une question de suivi. David, vas-y, en espérant qu'on peut avoir une meilleure qualité de son.
Oui, je l'espère, c'est un problème de connexion. La question est, légalement, c'est un paquet unique ou politiquement est un paquet unique?
Donc, je pense que j'étais très clair quand j'ai dit que, juridiquement parlant, il faut suivre un parcours différent par rapport aux éléments différents du paquet. Mais c'est vrai que tant qu'on n'a pas un accord entre les 3 institutions dans le cadre des réunions trilatérales, ça va bien évidemment avoir un impact aussi sur le processus juridique aussi qui doit suivre l'accord politique.
Merci beaucoup, Balázs. Je vous invite désormais à poser d'autres questions à Balázs si vous en avez. Donc, signalez-moi en gardant votre main levée. David, tu as encore une question de suivi? Non, apparemment pas. Merci beaucoup. Désormais, j'invite Naomi a posé sa question. So, Naomi, your hand is raised. So, I assume it is for Balázs because you kept your hand raised. So, go ahead.
Thanks. My question is on the Apple tax ruling. Is it okay to go ahead and ask that? Yes. Can we move on?
So, I will just check with your colleagues if they have additional questions for Balázs, because we are at a different subject right now, Next Generation EU and the budget. So please only keep your hand raised if you have a question on this subject at this stage. I don't believe this to be the case. Lorenzo apparently is interested in asking a question. I don't see his hand raised, so we'll give it a try. Lorenzo, try it. No, that doesn't seem to be the case. So we will revert to Lorenzo or to other colleagues who cannot do that at a later stage. Oh yeah, there he is, Lorenzo. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, good. Yes, it's for Balázs actually, and he knows that I'm interested in this because we had an exchange before. So if I understand well, on the 28th, there will be the 5th meeting of the 3 institutions. And so it is in the framework of this meeting that there will be, if I understood well, that there will be also a decision concerning the sequence of the other decisions. So it's like a sort of a political green light that comes from the three institutions, or is there anyway some decision-making process that is going on anyway, like for instance the one on the own resources, I imagine is anyway has to go on because it has been decided already. So is what I understood or not? Thanks.
Yes, donc, so effectively, I should say indeed in English, there is a process, there is a political process which has been ongoing, involving the three institutions, the Council of the European Union, the Parliament, and the Commission. What happens during these meetings will, of course, have an impact on the legal dimension of the package. So the different elements which will have to be adopted will be adopted according to the dynamics that will characterize the political discussions. So, as you rightly pointed out, we already have received from the Parliament side the Parliament's opinion, which is a first step when it comes to the amendment of the own resources decision. Of course, we welcome that. And what I can add is that when it comes to the trilateral meetings, the Commission is of course extremely determined to speed up these discussions, and we will do whatever we can on our side to bring these discussions to a quick and fruitful outcome, with a view to having the new MFF and Next Generation EU in place as of the 1st of January, because of course there is a wide range of beneficiaries out there which are counting on EU funds to be disbursed as of next year. You could mention researchers, entrepreneurs, students. We've got a responsibility to deliver for these people, and that's why the Commission is going to do everything it can to make this happen.
Thank you very much, Balázs. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Balázs, if you have today, on the MFF negotiations first. There is no hand raised for you, so thank you very much for today, Balázs. And now, Naomi, please.
Thanks for coming back to me, Dana. So my question, as I said, is about Apple tax case. Can you, or Ariana, perhaps tell us what was it that made the Commission confident that it could win this appeal exactly? And then secondly, for how many years do you think this 14.3 billion euro is going to sit collecting interest in the escrow account? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. I will try to give the floor to Ariana in case she's connected. There she is. Go ahead, Ariana.
Hi, I hope you can hear me and see me. So first of all, indeed, as announced this morning by Executive Vice President Vestager, I confirm that the Commission has decided to appeal before the European Court of Justice the General Court's judgment of July 2020 on the Apple state aid case in Ireland, which annulled the Commission's decision of August 2016, finding that Ireland had granted illegal state aid to Apple through selective tax breaks. What I can say is that we have taken the time to study the judgment in depth. The judgment addresses very complex and important legal concepts in state aid and international taxation. Therefore, the Commission respectfully considers that the General Court erred on points of law in its application of these concepts to the facts of the case. And for this reason, we are bringing the matter before the European Court of Justice. On the timing, I'm afraid I am not in a position to say anything about it, of course.
Thank you very much. Ariana? Are there any additional questions for Ariana on this specific subject? So please only keep your hand raised now if you have a question for her. Yes, I understand that Catherine has a question for Ariana, so go ahead, Catherine.
Yep. Yeah, Ariana, can I just ask, in the statement that Vestager published, she cited the issue of fair taxation and the question of treasuries needing revenue in these troubled times. Are either of these arguments relevant to your appeal? They seem to be important issues, but I don't see how it's relevant to the actual case.
Thank you, Ariane.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks, Dana. I believe that in her statement, the Commissioner was also giving a wider perspective of the context of the case and of the appeal. As you know, the Commission has been extremely active in ensuring fair taxation. Daniel can say everything about the package, for example, that we had proposed in July on it. So fair taxation is an important objective for the Commission, and we fully stand behind it. As I said, the appeal is specifically on matters of fact that have been interpreted by the General Court. It is application of points of law to the facts of the case, and this is where we are seeking the guidance of the European Court of Justice, because we believe that these matters are of great importance in the field of fiscal state aid, and we need clarity on them. So this is why we're bringing the appeal.
Thank you very much, Ariana. I will invite now to keep your hand raised or to raise it if you have questions for Ariana at this stage. That's not the case, so thank you very much, Ariana. And I will now go back to Katalin, who wishes to open a new subject. Katalin, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dana. This is, as I told you, about the amended audiovisual directive. Member states had to transpose the amended directive on the 19th of September. I'm wondering whether the Commission has any information which member states have done so and which have not done yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Katalin. Johannes joined me promptly on the podium to provide you an answer.
Yes, thank you, Katalin, for the question. Indeed, last Saturday, the 19th, was the deadline for implementation by the member states of the Audiovisual Media Services Directive. The directive has, if you want, three main aims that are pursued. First, to better protect vulnerable viewers, so that is minors, for example, that are using video on demand and video sharing platforms from hate speech and other harmful content. Then the second leg would be to preserve cultural diversity by enabling European companies, films, and other providers of media content to create and promote European works. This is like how much European works you have to offer. And then the third is independence of media regulators, fostering transparency, freedom of expression, and media pluralism. This is what the directive is about. Now, your question of the implementation. Yes, indeed, the deadline was last week, and we are now, of course, looking into the notifications we're receiving from member states, but this is a process which takes longer than just a few days. We're working on this, but it's, I mean, as with all directives, something that takes several weeks actually to see who notifies us on the transposition. So I'm afraid today I don't have a detailed overview, but this is something which will also then be published online as time goes by. But for the moment, I can't really tell you who or which member states have or have not yet transposed the directive.
Thank you very much, Johannes. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Johannes if you have on this subject. This doesn't seem to be the case. Questions for Johannes on any other subject that he covers? That is not the case either, so thank you, Johannes. And I will now invite you to raise your hand if you have any other questions for us today. And indeed, Tommaso has a question. Tommaso, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. It's a question about the EMA, because Guido Rasi, the director of the agency, said that the EMA is understaffed, seriously understaffed. They would need to hire at least 150 new personnel, but they can do that. Although they are financed not by the EU budget, but by pharmaceutical companies. And they basically don't understand why they can't hire new people, even because the EMA has to deal with a lot of stuff which was not under his remit previously. So my question is simple: why cannot the EMA hire more staff? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. I will now invite Stefan to connect to provide you an answer to this one.
Thank you very much, Tommaso, for the question. We of course very much acknowledge the good work done by the EMA in the context of, for instance, the COVID response. I think at this stage I would like to refer to what President von der Leyen has said during the State of the Union, where she referred to the need of a stronger European Medicines Agency in times of crisis. So there's definitely support for the good work done by the European Medicines Agency. On the specific issue regarding staff, I don't think I can give any reply at this stage, but I will look into this and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I will now invite you to ask additional questions to Stefan, if you have today, on this or other matters that he covers. That doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions for us today on any other matters? I do not see any hand raised, so thank you very much. Have a very good weekend and see you next week.